incumbency of Mr. Kra, about 1.25 lakh of fruit trees were given away free to anyone who applied, but the results have been disappointing. The villagers took the trees gladly and planted them, but want of protection and general apathy prevented their coming to maturity. After 1890, fruit trees were sold to villagers at half rates and were given free to public departments until 1894, from which year full rates were charged. The garden is now under the control of the Ranikhet range officer and affords employment to 9 Malis. The income is derived from the sale of fruit and grafts, the former being the more productive item. The fruit is usually sold to a contractor and brings in between rupees 2,500 and rupees 3,000 a year. Fauna. This district forms the eastern limit of the western Himalayan tract of naturalists. The river Kali, which becomes the Sarda, demarcating the western from the eastern Himalayan tract. From the plains to the highest mountain peaks, some 25,000 feet, three distinct zoological zones are included. Number one, the tropical, extending from the plains to about 2000 feet elevation, is part of the upper Ganges tract of the Oriental region, that is, the northwestern provinces tract of Blandford. The subtropical belt ranges between about 2000 and 6000 or 7000 feet and constitutes the eastern part of the western Himalayas tract of the Oriental region. And number three, above about 6000 to 7000 feet, the fauna is no longer Oriental but whole Arctic. Elephant. The district contains specimens of all the fauna of the provinces. The wild elephant is still found in the Almora Babar, but in reduced numbers. The Balrampur Khedda used to operate here. The elephants were usually driven into a cul-de-sac formed by the head of a nalla with precipitous banks, or occasionally wild elephants were run down in the open. The elephant is now protected by legislation and is never shot unless declared a rogue. He does much mischief in the forest to the bamboos by browsing on the tender shoots and trampling the more mature poles underfoot, and also destroys the crops of the Babar tenants wholesale at times, particularly in the rains. Cervidae. The sambar is the most widely distributed of all the deer tribe, being found in all the forests from the Babar up to an altitude of 10,000 feet. The sambar of the hills, where it is called the jarrao, is a stouter and more massive beast than his plains congener and carries very heavy horns. But as his home is in the thickest forest, he is hard to drive or stalk. In the plains, he can easily be shot from an elephant. The horns are shed during May and the rutting season occurs in October or November. The spotted deer or chital is very common in the Babar, where it congregates in large heads, but it is never found in the hills. The stags shed their horns at irregular times from October till July, but chiefly in October or November. The rutting season is equally irregular since the stags commence to rut as soon as their new horns are perfect. The hog deer is found within the same limits as the spotted deer. It affects grassy swamps or grass jungle along the banks of streams and only retires into forest when much disturbed. The swamp deer is not so common as it was, but it is still found occasionally in the Babar. The kakar or barking deer, so called from its cry, is common throughout the district up to about 10,000 feet. It is by no means confined to the hills, being frequently seen in the Babar. It flourishes apparently between 3,000 and 6,000 feet. It is a pretty little beast, about 2 feet high, of a bright chestnut color, carrying short forked horns rising from long pedicles. The upper jaw of the male is armed with tusks with which it can inflict severe wounds. The musk deer, Kastura, is found in the upper ranges from 8,000 feet to above the limits of the forest, but is so much sought after for its valuable perfume bearing pod that it is now becoming rare. The pod is an abdominal gland often weighing 2 tolas and worth about rupees 30. The musk deer stands about 20 inches high. It is of a brownish grey color with harsh and brittle hair. It is generally solitary, very active and sure-footed, and it prefers rocky, precipitous ground. Both sexes are destitute of horns, but the males have long, slender tusks, about 3 inches long in the upper jaw. The hillmen take them in a simple form of snare. A low hedge is built along the ridge of his spurs, sometimes a mile long, and sufficiently high and thick to tempt the game to save themselves the trouble of jumping over. Openings are left in the hedge at intervals of 30 feet in which the snares are set. These are laid flat on the ground, one end being attached to a stout sapling bent over so as to form a strong spring. When the musk deer approaches the hedge, he turns aside until he discovers an opening through which he walks and puts his foot in the snare. The end of the sapling is released and instantly springs up, suspending the deer by the leg. Many pheasants are taken in the same manner. The flesh of the musk deer is untainted by his perfume. The nilgai is found occasionally at the foot of the hills, and the four-horned antelope is in the same localities and also in the lower sal-clothed hills. Goats, etc. The Gural or Himalayan chamois is found as high as 11,000 feet, but his usual habitat is between 3,000 and 9,000 feet. Both sexes have horns. Those of the male average 6 inches in length and those of the female about 2 inches shorter. They generally occur in parties of 3 or 4, but the largest males are usually solitary. They affect moderately steep grassy slopes not too thickly covered with pine. The Gural is very tenacious of life and will often carry away a lot of load. The Thar is found in the most precipitous parts of the upper range between 7,000 and 12,000 feet according to the season. Both sexes have horns, but those of the female are much slighter and shorter. An old male is an imposing sight. He stands nearly 3.5 feet high, wears a long shaggy coat reaching to his knees, and carries horns 13 or 14 inches long. An animal smaller in size but apparently otherwise identical with the Thar is sometimes found at lower altitudes. It is called the Khar Thar. The Saran, though of the same family as the Gural, is nearly as large as the Thar. It is a strange, uncouth beast, very shy and inhabiting precipitous rocks clothed with dense jungle. Its chief accomplishment is the ease with which it can gallop downhill. Its average horn measurement is about 9 or 10 inches. The Barhal or wild blue sheep is rarer in Almora than in Garhwal. It frequents high grassy slopes below the snow line between 10,000 and 16,000 feet. A good ram carries horns 25 inches long. The mutton, especially in September, is particularly praised by those who have tasted it. Tiger. The tiger is found from the Bhabar near Tanakpur up to about 10,000 feet. Those which are found on the outer ranges doubtless migrate to the Bhabar and Tarai, but those found in the interior never leave the hills. They are quite different from the plains tiger, being of a stouter build with longer and more furry hair and shorter and thicker tails. In the earlier years of British rule, Kathiawar and Gaugoli were almost deserted on account of man-eating tigers to such an extent that the circumstance gave rise to the proverb, Kathiari, a village near Almora for vegetables, Gangoli for tigers. The Bhabar is still famous for its tiger shooting, but the animal is not so much common in the hills as formerly. He is, however, occasionally met with in the Bageshwar Valley, for instance. No reward is now offered for the destruction of tigers except in unusual circumstances. Panther. The panther or leopard is extremely common throughout the district. He is a bold and bloodthirsty beast. His food consists of the cattle, sheep, and goats which he is able to kill. Dogs form an agreeable change of diet, and he occasionally takes to killing man when his superior audacity and cunning make him a more dangerous pest than even a man eating tiger. The panther is exceedingly bold, often making descents in search of prey into the heart of a village, and it is said that a few years ago, the assistant commissioner of Almora adjourned his court in order to kill a panther which had taken up its quarters in the center of the town. The natives kill a great number in deadfall traps called jibala, baited with a dead sheep, goat, or dog. The panther in the hills is usually called bag or baghera. The snow leopard is nowhere common to the south of the snowy range, but there are generally one or two on all hills where the barhal or wild sheep is found. It is much execrated by sportsmen as a game destroyer. The fur is of a pale yellowish ground with dark grey marks all over the body except on the stomach, which is pure white. The skin is valuable. Three species of jungle cat are found in the district. In the hands of the hillman, they are frequently made to personate panther cubs for the sake of the reward. They feed on rats, mice, and birds, being particularly addicted to pheasant chicks. The sloth bear, Ursus labiatus, is found in the Bhabar in the lower hills up to an altitude of about 3,000 feet, but he never penetrates into the interior beyond the first range. His principal food is ants, beetles, and other insects, fruits, roots, and honey, though he does not disdain carrion. The Himalayan black bear, Ursus torquatus, is very common throughout the district. In the upper ranges, he usually hibernates throughout the winter and is in fact seldom seen except during the rains. But those living in the lower hills descend to the Bhabar for the cold weather. He is a good tree climber and feeds on acorns and other wild fruits, but his favorite food is mandua. Much damage is done by black bears in the food gardens of Binsar and other places. They occasionally kill cattle, sheep, and goats, and like the sloths, are not above eating carrion on occasion. The sight and hearing are both keen, and the black bear is a ferocious and courageous beast, not hesitating to attack man if disturbed. Many hillmen are mauled by them every year. The bear invariably attacks the head and face. The red bear, Ursus isabellinus, is found, though very rarely indeed, in Dharma, Johar, and Byas, living along or above the upper limit of forest far away from the haunts of man. He feeds on roots, weeds, grasses, and even insects, but he will eat the flesh of animals he has killed and has been known to feed on carrion. His scent is keen, but his sight and hearing are dull. He hibernates from December to March and is a timid, unaggressive animal. Others. The hyena is found in the ravines of the Bhabar but seldom enters the hills. It is a cowardly animal and never shows fight, even when wounded. The wolf occurs occasionally in the sub-mountain tract, but rarely, if ever, in the hills. The wild dog is unfortunately by no means uncommon throughout the district, though it is most frequently met with in the Bhabar. The wild dog hunts in the packs, the sambar or chital being its favorite quarry. It is said that a pack hunts in relays, always driving the prey in a circle. The hindquarters and abdomen are the first parts attacked. A pack of wild dogs has been known to bay a bear. Jackals are very common, especially at the foot of the hill, but they are found up to 7,000 feet and they infest the station of Almora itself. Their ordinary food is carrion and vegetable matter, especially maize and pumpkins, but they kill a great many young deer and often catch birds, while they occasionally attack wounded animals. The ordinary plains fox and the mountain fox both occur in the Almora district. The latter is a fine beast with a fine fur. It is a poor runner on level ground, and even on open hillsides, an ordinary half bred greyhound can easily catch it. The wild pig is found throughout the district from the Bhabar up to 10,000 feet. In the hills, it chiefly affects oak forests living on the mast. The pine marten, chatraila, and the otter wood work considerable destruction among game and fish respectively. The monkeys of the district are the common herbescent races of the plains and the Himalayan langur, both of which do much damage to the crops, though the latter is often content with acorns and other wild foods. In the extreme north, rare visitors from Tibet are the Nayan, Ovis hartseni, the great Tibetan sheep, the kyang or wild ass, the yak, and the Tibetan wolf. Birds. The district of Almora is very rich in bird life. Most of the birds of the plains occur also in the hills, and in addition to these, there are many species peculiar to the colder regions. Birds of prey, eagles, hawks, falcons, and vultures are very common, so much so that in former years a tax was imposed upon sporting hawks. The European soon recognizes species allied to those well known to him at home, such as thrushes, wall-owls, yellow and pied wagtails, swallows, swifts, kingfishers, woodpeckers, cuckoos, tree creepers, shrikes, oracles, robins, red stars, and warblers. Among game birds, the lungi pheasant is found at about 12,000 feet. The brilliant monal pheasant is found from 8,000 to 12,000 feet. The koklas or pokras from 6,000 to 10,000 feet. And the rather uncommon chir pheasant from 5,000 to 10,000 feet. The commonest of all the pheasants is the kalich, which frequents thick forests from the skirts of the Babar up to a height of about 6,000 feet. Among partridges, the well-known chakor is very common. The hill partridge and the black partridge, the last up to about 6,000 feet, are often backed. The Piora, Blitz hill partridge, is found occasionally in the dense forests. The woodcock is not uncommon. It used to be shot fairly frequently in the Baldoti plantation near Almora before the shooting rules came into force, and sportsmen from Ranikhet still bag a fair number in Dwarayan. The snow partridge is found on Barhal ground, but it is rare. In the extreme north, the Himalayan snowcock is found on or near the snow line. Among pigeons, the blue rock and the wood pigeon are common. Vast flocks of snow pigeons are sometimes seen in the higher ranges. Duck and teal occasionally rest on the rivers. In the Bhabar and lower hills, peafowl, spurfowl, and jungle fowl are extremely plentiful. The ordinary game birds of the plains, partridge, quail, and snipe, are also to be found in Bhabar. Fish abound in all streams and are gratefully eaten by nearly all classes, forming in the riparian villages a very important accessory to the ordinary food stocks. Among the larger species, the commonest and most acceptable are the mahsir and the kalabans. The gunch or freshwater shark is said to inhabit the deeper pools of the Sarchu. The Indian trout is rare, but the chilwa swarms wherever there is running water. Fish in the hills have a hard struggle for existence. In the later part of the hot weather, they run up the streams to spawn, and to many, the initial obstacle of a weir proves insurmountable. Should they conquer it, however, they are liable, as they push their way up the most exogenous streams, to deposit the ova to fall victims to the club or spear of the villagers. On the return journey, many dangers await them. Conical shaped baskets are placed at openings 3 or 4 feet apart along an irrigation weir, and especially where the stream is strongest. An unwary fish coming too close to the weir finds itself hurled into a basket from which there is no escape. Or two men sit on commanding rocks at opposite sides of the river, holding each the end of a stout cord which is armed with large hooks every 3 or 4 inches. They wait until a fish is seen to pass over the cord when a sharp jerk frequently transfixes it. This contrivance is called the raksha. Many fish escape maimed. A third method is the diversion of the stream. The fish left in the larger pools of the old stream are taken out as required, are more often allowed to perish, and those that attempt to run down the new stream find their escape barred by a net. Heavily weighted casting nets are also successfully used, the chief victims being kalabans under a pound in weight. The most important spawning grounds in the district are found along the coast of the Sarju and Ramganga, which are not snow-fed, and it is therefore along the coast of these rivers that these poaching operations are most frequently pursued. They are, however, legal, and the right to take fish according to these methods is usually conveyed by the settlement agreements, all rivers being, like wasteland and forest, the property of the government. The rights are very valuable, and the villages of Masi on the Ramganga point with pride to a fine pool below the bridge, still harboring some immense fish, which was the subject of prolonged litigation ultimately settled by the High Court. Poisoning and the use of explosives are frequently used, but these are illegal. The erection of weirs not expressly recognized by the settlement agreements is also prohibited. The rivers of the district still afford excellent sport to the angler, the most favorable seasons being in March and April before the snow water comes down. Snakes. Major F. Wall of Indian Medical Service has kindly furnished a note on the snakes of the district. In all, 36 species have been identified in the Western Himalayas, but 2 are of somewhat doubtful occurrence in this district. Of the 34 that remain, 26 are harmless in the sense that they are non-poisonous, while 8 are venomous. The cobra is very common in the hills where it may be found up to 6,000 feet. Beyond that altitude, it rarely occurs. Bangarus cerulus is the krait of the plains, and it's very uncommon outside the submontane tract or the low hills overlooking it. This snake grows to a length of 54 inches. Its color above is deep lustrous blue back uniform or streaked and reticulated with white. Below it is white. Bungarus wali, Wall's krait, has much the same general appearance as the common krait. It is of a glistening black color on the back marked with milky white cross lines formed of smallish oval or round spots. Below it is white, mottled with slate towards the tail. It grows to a larger size than the common krait, the largest on record being 5 feet 4.5 inches. Naya bangaris, formerly Naya elaps or Ophiophagous elaps, the king cobra grows up to 200 inches. It is difficult to distinguish between young specimens and the cobra. They are, however, of a pure jet black. The adult female is olive brown with pale cross bands, deeply edged with black, the underside being mottled white with black above the tail. The throat is yellow. Calophis mcclellandi grows to about 30 inches and is rare in Kumaon. The body and the tail are reddish brown with generally a black vertebral line from the nape to the tip of the tail, and the head and the neck are black with a yellow bar behind the eyes. The belly is yellowish with black cross bands or quadrangular spots. A variety, nigriventer, has been found in the western Himalayas. This snake, though venomous, is not fatal to a man. It occurs in the subtropical belt of the Himalayas. Vipera russellii, Russell's viper, grows to 54 inches and is common up to about 6,000 feet. The color above is grayish or reddish brown with three rows of blackish brown annular oculi, each surrounded by an inner white and an outer black ring down the back and sides. It has a broad arrow mark on the head formed by two pale lines from the snout over the eyes to the temporal region. Ancestrodon Himalayanus is the only hill snake found above 8,000 feet. In color, it is dark brown, indistinctly marked with darker spots edged with black. The belly is black, marbled with yellow. A blackish band extends from the eyes to the gape. It attains a length of 25 inches and is venomous, though not fatal to man. Lachesis gramineus, formerly Trimeresurus monticola, the green-pitted viper, grows to a length of 37 inches. It is one of the handsomest of the tree snakes and is common in the Bhabar. Its bite too is not necessarily fatal to man. Of the non-venomous snakes, the python is most notable. It grows to about 30 feet, but specimens over 20 feet are rare. It is common in the Bhabar, but its rarity in the upper hills has invested in the few specimens seen with almost supernatural terrors. There it is called the charao, and it is said to be of enormous size with a flowing mane of red hair and to make use of a large pine tree as a walking stick when descending the mountains. The rat snake or dhaman of the plains is also extremely common. It grows to 91 inches. The other reptiles call for little remark. The bloodsucker lizard grows to a length of 14 or 16 inches. In summer, the males have the body red and the head and neck yellowish, picked out with red. In spite of its name, it is perfectly harmless. The leech of a sufficiently common occurrence to deserve a short note. It is particularly active during the rains and its favorite habitat is an oak forest. After a smart shower, it appears in myriads and any barefooted wayfarer is soon made uncomfortably aware of its presence. Another pest to travelers is the small stinging fly called the mora. Its bite causes small painful sores and intense irritation. Cattle. The hill cattle are usually small in size, active, and sure footed. The cows are wretched milkers, producing usually not more than a seer of milk a day. The cattle are usually kept at night in the garth under the dwelling house or in separate cow sheds. They are littered with oak leaves, and at the end of the year, or possibly more often, the shed is cleared out and its contents taken to the fields. Fodder consists chiefly of grass carried in the farm, more precipitous hillsides by the women, bjorn, mulberry or oak leaves or straw. Grain and salt are rarely given. The cattle graze among the stubble of harvested fields and in the forests and village pastures. Fodder is seldom preserved except in the north, where meadow land is divided among the Hisedas, each cutting and storing his own, or if he prefers, grazing it. But hillsides that are too steep for safe grazing act as a natural reserve. Surplus straw is stacked upon trees near the homestead and consumed as required. In the summer, the villagers of the neighborhood drive their cattle up to the great oak forests on the higher hills. There, they make a more or less permanent cattle station, not leaving it until the rains have well set in. Dudatoli in the Garhwal district and Dunagiri near Dwarahat are famous grazing grounds, resorts for cattle. In the extreme north, the grassy expanses between the upper limit of the forest and the region of perpetual snow are the summer grazing grounds of the whole body of cattle belonging to the villages in the vicinity. From the southern and middle Parganas, cattle are driven down to the Bhabar in October and kept there until the break of the monsoon, or in the east, in the case of cattle owners who have no Bhabar cultivation, till March. Sales of cattle are rare. The cultivators usually breed their own plough animals. Buffaloes do well, but the male is never used in the plough. Cattle are often visited by the rinderpest called manrogue, which in almost all cases is imported from the Bhabar by animals returning from their winter grazing grounds. The disease is very deadly and is, as would be expected, commonest in the center and south center of the district. Dysentery, chera, usually appears in the same tract. Hemorrhagic septicemia, BAMCA, causes considerable loss in the northern Parganas. The people are well awake to their own interests and usually take effective measures for the segregation of infected animals. Very few bullocks have been broken into the cart oxen by people living near the cart roads, and it is a common sight to see a family pushing its way down a cart road to its barber cultivation, driving the plough cattle in front, empty or but lightly laden, while the men, women, and even the little children bear their household property on their heads. In the 1898, oh, that's a cute sight. It was not seen in the villages of my childhood, where women and children were walking barefoot, allowing their cattle to walk alongside them, not riding on them. Is a very rare sight, not seen in my childhood. In 1898-99, there were only 315 carts in the district, and probably some of these belonged to plains carriers. Little cattle breeding is conducted in the district, and the only trade that exists is the sale of some rather poor young bulls to the Muktesar Bacteriological Laboratory. Mr. Stevenson of Chowkuri introduced some plains breeds upon his estate, but he found that though the calves produced were good, the cows lost condition through seeking their food on the hill pastures, and a further disadvantage lay in the fact that the pure plains breed wintered badly. He therefore crossed the indigenous breed with plains bulls and has produced an animal that meets his double object of milk and manure. An animal that can graze from morning to night in all weathers, does not require blanketing in the winter, and gives a fair amount of rich butter producing milk. Mr. Stevenson has thus proved that if necessary, the hill cattle can be materially improved. But at the same time, the Kumaoni prefers a small active bullock for feed work, and his buffaloes give him all the milk he needs. The yak. The yak is occasionally in the extreme north tamed and reduced to domestic servitude. But it cannot safely be brought much lower than 10,000 feet, and hybrids are more commonly used. When the sir is a yak and the dam is a hill cow, the product is called jubu. When the parentage is reversed, garje. The yak will carry 2 or 3 mans, is docile and sure-footed, and is often ridden. The wild yak is very rarely found in British territory. It is a much finer beast than its domesticated cousin, and in the expressive words of the peasant, the liver of a wild yak is a load for a tame one. Sheep and goats. The sheep found in the lower hills differ from those of the plains in some minor respects, the chief characteristic being the shortness of the tail. The hillmen refuse, in fact, to eat the flesh of the plains sheep, its long tail, according to Mr. Trail, constituting it, in the eyes of the Highlanders, a species of dog. The sheep is bred chiefly for the sale of the meat and in a very minor degree for its wool. The indigenous goat of the middle and southern Parganas is exactly the same as the goat of the plains. It is no good for milking and is chiefly esteemed for its flesh and for its manure. Goats are sacrificed to the gods, sheep are not. The pack animals of the Bhotia are of a very different class. The sheep they use for carrying loads are of a strong, long-legged Tibetan stock, bearing no resemblance to the diminutive animal of the lower hills. The Bhotias themselves rarely breed their animals, though some keep a few eaves. They buy a great many Chamba sheep from the Kangra people, who bring them down to Ramnagar for sale. Sheep are also bred in the Badan Pargana of the Garhwal district and in Danpur, Talla Johar and Malla Askot. These regions also breed goats. The Bhotia goats are stout, shaggy animals, natives either of both or of the western Himalayas. The loads are carried in saddlebags made of hempen sackcloth or worsted, backed with leather. These are secured on the animal by means of girth, breastband, and crupper. A goat's load is about 12 cs and a sheep's 10 cs. At the cattle census of 1898-99, 1,01,373 sheep and 84,715 goats were enumerated. Ponies. They trade in Bhotia ponies, which are really raised in Tibet and imported by the Bhotias, is nearly dead. They are seldom used for carrying loads, for which purpose, indeed, they are much too valuable. A good saddle animal commands a high price. The pony most commonly seen in the hill villages is not to be differentiated from the plains Tut. There are also some which appear to be of impure Bhotia descent. They are used in the saddle chiefly, but also occasionally for the transport of goods. Most of the small hill shopkeepers possess one or two animals of this description. The carrying trade between the Bhabar markets and the hills is in the hands of plains Mohammedans or Kumhas who drive herds of ponies or mules. The horses and ponies numbered in all only 3,653 in 1898-99 and mules 491. Okay, let's end the chapter here. Page 38. End of the section Fauna. Hey, what is this? What's happening? How to close this? I have no idea how to. Hey, what is. How do I close this?